Hi, this is Carlin Laborio, and I wanted to share with you some tips for modeling essays, especially at the beginning of the school year, whatever grade you teach, whether it's third grade to high school, sometime at the beginning of the year, you are surely planning to start introducing ECRs. For third grade, that might be the first time the students have ever heard that word. For fourth grade, it might be a review, but you might have some new students from other states who have never heard of it. So, how do you introduce ECRs in a way that's not going to have you pulling your hair out and having the kids get frustrated? So, you want your kids to be the ultimate goals for them to be avid readers and writers, for them to be very successful with writing these essays by April. So, how are we going to get them there? First, you have to start simple, getting them to write simple, complete sentences, then model and practice saying and writing SCRs, short constructed responses. You can even color code them. Once you feel your students have SCRs down, then you're going to move on to ECRs, extended constructed responses. And this, I'm gearing this mostly towards Texas teachers. This is everything I'm saying is all TEKS based, and this is going to help your students with the new STAAR question types. However, there are 39 states across the US that are also doing evidence based writing. So this video could apply to anyone who's trying to prepare their kids for that type of writing. So once you feel your students are ready, I would recommend reading aloud a passage to everyone. As you're reading the passage, you're discussing the story. You can model a foursquare, which is included in all of my resources. It's basically just one of many strategies that I like to use since the passage is now on the computer. I like to give them a foursquare to kind of quickly, it's just a quick way to analyze the passage and go deep with the passage, which makes writing an essay way easier if they can, if you, even if you model and do the foursquare with them, they're going to then understand the passage so much better and it'll make writing about it way easier. So I would recommend doing that, especially in the beginning. So you model the foursquare, you could dissect a prompt, model how you would dissect the prompt, and then you could give them a black and white copy of an essay that is a exemplar example, and they could work in collaborative groups to color code the essay. And that is going to get them, you're kind of tricking them because they are reading the essay in groups instead of you reading it to them. They're reading it in their groups, they're taking turns and reading it together. You're walking around listening to their conversations, making sure they're on task. They are underlining the introduction red, the conclusion red. They are looking for text evidence, which might have, a sentence starter, like according to the text, it says, and it might have quotation marks, it might be paraphrased, and they're going to underline text evidence blue. And then if you have never taught how to do the explain, you could say, well, what's left? That's the green. But you obviously want to teach a mini lesson on how to explain the evidence, which is basically coming from their own brain. And they're explaining why that's important, what that shows, what does it mean in their own words that comes from their own brain, not from the passage. And so in the beginning, you could do that for week 1, for example. And then week 2, you could dissect the same exact prompt on Monday, or you could pick a different one, but I recommend even just doing the same one. Keep it simple, keep it easy. Then they could look at the format, they could reread the passage again. Even though you read it to them, they could read it again in groups because it's been a weekend. They might forget. And then either that day or the next day, they could just write the RA in collaborative groups with a partner or you could do it shared with them. There's various, eventually you want to get them to do this independently, but you have to scaffold it. At first, they could do it with a partner, and then the next time they could do it independently. And so, as they're doing the RA, you could be walking around the room with a pen and conferencing with each student. As they finish the RA, they're going to move on to their station work. They're always going to be working on something. And then you're conferencing with them. You can even share out a few RAs out loud for the class so that they can hear examples, especially if they're struggling. You can, what I like to do is I conference with them all during that writer's workshop. And the next day, they could go and find their evidence, and they could you could be conferencing with them on that, making sure the evidence matches, sharing out some of the evidence, and don't feel like, oh, they heard the answer, they're not doing it on their own. That's okay. In the beginning, it's good for them to hear examples from their peers and then have them say it and write it. The next day, they're going to do the E's. Same thing, you conference and share. Then they do the conclusion. And so when you chunk it like this, one, the kids aren't going to get frustrated because they're just doing a little piece and then they're moving on to something else. It also gives you, as a teacher, time to conference with each kid really quickly on just one. It's not going to take you that long just to check one sentence. And chances are you could do all 20 kids, however many kids you have, in 30 minutes. If you can't do it, you could always finish them after school, and then they could get started with the next part the next day, however you want to do it. Those are just some ideas. Okay, so let's look at the color coding. So this is an activity that I gave as a freebie to everyone on my email list. I'll put the link in the description if you would like to sign up for my email list, and then you'll automatically get this. But this is when we were talking about argumentative, and this is a chores debate. So when I introduced argumentative, I gave them this black and white exemplar example, and I had them read it in collaborative groups. And at the top, it has the keys. So they were to um, look at transitions or sentence starters. Those are orange. If they see restate an answer, the introduction or the conclusion would be red. And then argumentative has another element which goes with opinion writing, and that is giving the reasons. So the reasons are pink. Okay. Everything else is the same. Blue is the evidence, green is explain. So I highly recommend, this is the easiest low prep activity ever. All you have to do is give them one of my essays that is already written, printed in black and white, or if you have one printed in black and white, give it to each student, give them some crayons, and explain the activity. And this took maybe 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes for them to read the essay in groups and then underline the parts. And then we would do one paragraph at a time, and then we would stop and discuss. And so, as they're each having to do the crayons, they're each learning and seeing that visual of learning the different parts of the essay and the structure. So, that's a great activity and a great way to introduce and model. Another way you can model that, I love this activity, and this is how what I used in my classroom with real fourth graders, and this is how I introduced argumentative. So the picture that you're looking at is the argumentative essay. This is actually my number one selling resource on TPT. And it takes the students one paragraph at a time. They open up one baggie at a time. Each table group has 5 baggies that you have cut out the cardstock and printed. And it is a little bit of prep work, but it is totally worth it. You can keep it forever. And so basically, they put together the paragraph with transition words, which are orange. They have their uh, answering the question at the top. They summarized their reasons, and then they had, so you're actually looking at paragraph 1 and 2 in the picture to the right. Okay, so where it says, first of all, that's the beginning of paragraph 2. And so this is a great activity for the students to just read all of the pieces and try to figure out what order it goes in, which really is hands-on revising. They're deciding if they want to rearrange the sentences to find out, they have to read it out loud to see if it makes sense. So this is a really great hands-on and visual way to just introduce the structure of the essay. It really helps them to remember the parts too. And I have one of these for informational and one for argumentative. And these are in all the VIP grade level bundles, but you can also get them separately. Okay, this is another way you could model is by giving your students an ECR puzzle. So all that is you just print one essay, and it can be from one of my resources or it can be one that you make. And basically it's already color coded. It's already color coded, and all you're doing is printing one page on white or cream colored cardstock, whatever you have. And after you print that, you just cut out the sentences. And this one, I kept the transitions with the sentence so that they could use those words to decide the order that they want to put it in. And so they work with a partner or they work with their table, and they are given a baggie with all these sentences, and they have to decide where they go on the planner. So they have to figure out which red is the RA and which red is the S. Does it matter? Could they be interchanged? And those are great discussions that you can have with your students. And then they'll put the blues, they'll put the greens, and then they'll check in with you, and then you can have a discussion with the whole class. Oh, what did this group put? Did they put a different answer than another group? Do they both make sense? Does one sound better than the other? And you can have these great discussions later in the year, after you've already introduced lots of models. What you can do with this activity when you get closer to February and March is or anytime really, but that's when I did it, you can remove a few of the pieces after they have put it together, and you can replace those with colorful post-it notes. And you can say, now you're going to work with your partner and you're going to write in the missing pieces using the passage. And that's a great way to get your students to write pieces of the ECR without writing the whole essay. It's just really great practice. And I like doing that at teacher table because then I can really see what they're doing, and I can kind of coach them and conference with them and prompt them to basically help them with whatever they're struggling with, whether it's the explain or it's the evidence or it's the sum it up. And so that's a really great activity to do at your teacher table. So I will link where you can find these activities if you would like to try them out with your students. But I hope that this gave you some ideas of how you can introduce and model ECRs in a way that is fun and engaging. And you're basically tricking your students to analyze exemplar models without them even realizing it. All right, so try it out and then let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. All right, have a great day. Bye.